Retro.
Yeah.
Electro. Tech.
Oh yeah.
Hey, turn the lights back on. Wow. Retro electro tech. When real audio ruled the world.
Well, hello there once again, ladies and gentlemen. This is Retro Ernest of Retro Electro Tech. And upside down on padded blocks is a Crosley turntable, a model C as in Charlie, 62, B as in Bravo, WA as in Whiskey Alpha. So, why is this turntable here today? Well, before I get into that, let me just mention too that it's a kind of a self-contained unit. I think it comes with a couple of speakers, from what I understand. It has a built-in amplifier and Bluetooth, and it's got some jacks there, so you can just run it into another amplifier if you don't want to use the the built-in amp and you just want to use it as a just a solo turntable. So, anyways, yeah. Let me go ahead and zoom in on the reason why it's in the shop. So these speaker terminal, these clips, okay, the negatives are still intact, but the positives busted loose. So, they're a little on the light duty side, so I'm going to replace this this little terminal block here. However, and let me switch camera views here. Alright, so this is the terminal block that's going to be replacing the original. You can see the body of it's a little bit larger, a little bit more beefy, but the screw holes, the screw spacing is pretty much spot on. I measured center to center and it's going to work. So what am I going to do about the body being larger, and why didn't I source something smaller? Well, I tried to search around with the time I have available, which the time I have available is very limited. I told the customer that as well, and I'm just kind of doing this as sort of a last minute thing because he couldn't find anyone to help him do this, and I told him, well, I'll fit it in between the mountain of work that I have to deal with. But anyways, I did search around. I tried to find something, comparing some dimensions of the original. This is what's more common. This is more or less the size of these styles of terminal blocks, these spring terminal blocks, whatever. So when you search for these, you'll see a lot of them. But I've noticed too on a lot of the web pages, at least the ones I was looking at. Well, I say a lot. I wasn't looking at a lot because I didn't really have the time, but I did jump around on a few web pages, and I didn't even notice the dimensions on some of those pages. And I don't really have time to search around for dimensions on a page. If they don't have them just listed right there with the general description, if they don't have the dimensions, I'm not going to search for some inconspicuous little tab or something that you click on to get the dimensions and all that. So I'm not going to bother with that. You know how some websites are. So anyways, these again seem to be the more common that I've always seen is these blocks that are a little bit larger and all that. These seem a little bit small to me and a little light duty. So I'm sure that somewhere out there, they're around. If you could spend the time and hunting down the dimensions, you might find something. I don't think these are rare. They're not as rare as hen's teeth, but these definitely are the more readily available. And also too, the advantage of this is that the spring terminals are a bit more beefy, a bit more on the heavy duty side compared to these, which is why these broke off in the first place. You got to be careful with this type anyways. They do wear out, they bust off. I see that on other pieces of equipment out there. But if I'm going to use one of these, then yeah, it'd be nice to use something like this. It's a little bit more beefy again. So what I'm probably going to end up having to do, as my point, is I might have to route this open a little bit here very carefully, maybe a little bit from the bottom of the plinth, just kind of route it open and get this kind of centered in there. Once I start taking the measurements, when I get the original block off of there, I already started the process. This video is actually kind of an afterthought. I figured, you know, well, I'll roll some footage. Maybe somebody might be interested in this video, and well, I'll pass it to the owner as well. But I already got the cover removed, and I started to loosen up the block and, you know, take the nuts off the back when I realized that, yeah, I'll just go ahead and roll some footage. So I do that sometimes, kind of an afterthought video kind of thing. So yeah, I'll route this open a little bit. It'll be done very neatly. The only reason why I'm even going to do this kind of a modification is because, again, you know, the owner was kind of in a little bit of a pickle there. He wanted to get this fixed for his daughter, and you know, like I said, I don't have a lot of time to search around to see if I can find an original. So I said, well, I'll work it in. I'll see what I can find that's pretty close and make it work and whatnot. And so I'm willing to do that modification, a little slight, you know, modification, opening this up a little bit, routing this open, you know, if need be. I'll see more once I get that out of there and take my measurements and find out which route I'm going to go. But if I do have to route this open a little bit, it's going to be done very neatly. It's going to be done very sympathetically. Even though this isn't a super high-end and high-dollar, highly collectible, rare vintage turntable that's going to be featured in the Smithsonian Institute when I'm done with it, I still respect people's equipment, and I'm not going to do a hack job and all gouged and nasty and crooked and all that stuff. And plus, this is going to be around back anyways, but still, not an excuse to do crappy work. Oh, and one thing that I will point out real quick before I move forward, and let me reposition the camera. Okay, so this here is the spindle hub or housing, whatever, and this nut here was backed way off. It was super loose, and I noticed that right off the bat. I was wondering why I looked and I saw the nut almost, you know, almost to the point where it was falling off this threaded hub, and the actual housing was just wobbling around. So how it got that way, I don't know. Maybe somebody forgot to tighten it, obviously, but I tightened it up, and now the spindle housing is nice and firm, so there won't be any wobble. And yeah, that's kind of important. So so anyways, just that. Okay, so everything's soldered on there nicely. Go ahead and move on. Okay, so here we are. It's mounted up. The reason I chose to go this route as far as mounting this block on the outside instead of coming in, or shall I say coming out from the inside and popping out, it would have been a little bit more recessed. These would have been hidden. You would have just saw this portion protruding out from the inside. The only thing is that on this side it covers up the text a little bit. You can still see R plus and R minus on this side, but because of the color coding, you know, red indicating positive and the black the negative and all that, you know, we know what's up here. And also too, you can still see the R, you can still see the L on this side, so that you don't get your right and your left confused. And the fact that I didn't have to cut into the plastic or, you know, route out anything at all is good. The angle I'm you know, kind of at right now, it looks like it hangs down a lot from the bottom, but it really doesn't. As a matter of fact, let me tilt it upwards a little bit, and you'll be able to see that. Yeah, you see what I mean? It really doesn't hang down from the bottom very much. It actually looks pretty darn good, all things considered. Okay, so as far as basic maintenance is concerned, I'm doing the basic of the basic, and I'm going to put one very small drop of oil right here on the shaft, and that's it. I mean, it's, you know, you don't want to put too much oil here on this little motor. Just like I said, it's probably even like a half a drop. It just soaked right down into the little bearing there, and that's it. Good enough. And other than that, let me just clean out the spindle hub. This is a fairly newer turntable, obviously. Like I said, it was produced, I think, around 2021, but this one might even be a little newer. I don't know how long they ran production on this particular turntable, or if they're still making them. And you know, but still, since I'm doing this, I might as well just go ahead and, so I'm just using a little swab with a couple drops of 99.9% anhydrous alcohol. Exciting. And just giving this a little clean out. Again, it's not bad because it's a newer turntable, but you know, since I'm in here, might as well. And then I'm gonna clean the you know, the spindle and the little flywheel area where the belt makes contact. I'm gonna clean the little, whatchamacallit there. Sometimes my mind just goes blank. I hope that's not a sign of things to come. Otherwise, I'm sharp as a tack. So yeah, I'm just, you know, just any belt residue, anything that would hinder the gripability of the belt. So let me get the other side of the swab here, put a few drops of alcohol, and clean the pulley surface. That's what I'm looking for, this little belt pulley here. Let's get it nice and clean so our belt has a nice surface to, clean surface to grip. Alright. Obviously everything's newer here, so not a big deal. Alright. And then I'm going to put a drop, just a little drop of oil down in here. And I'm using a very fine sewing machine oil, something that doesn't get all gummy and whatnot as it you know, goes away over time. Some oils will get kind of sticky and gummy, and then I'll just put a little bit here and just, yeah. Actually, did I clean this off with a rag? I don't think I did. I'm jumping ahead of myself. That's okay. Just let me get off the residual oil on here. Yeah, it's nice and smooth. Okay. And then I'll just, again, just put a couple drops. Just kind of rub it around here. Drop this down in there. All right, looking good. So, and then the platter just drops on this, you know, hub or flywheel, whatever, and does its thing. So I'm going to go ahead and get the belt on, drop the platter on, and then I'm going to check the tracking force of the tone arm cartridge. See what the tracking force is, just the downward pressure. It looks like it's set slightly, according to the dial there, it's set slightly below 1.5 grams. I'm going to see where it's actually sitting, and then based on the cartridge and the manufacturer's spec on the cartridge and all that, I'll go ahead and set the tracking force if it isn't already on point, and then get this over to the to another bench where I have a couple little speakers set up, and try it out and make sure everything's good to go. Alright, so installed on the tone arm is a Audio-Technica, an AT3600, which from what I was able to look up, has a tracking force of between 1.5 and 2.5 grams. The counterweight is set at just a little bit under 1.5 right now. So first of all, I have the scale here. Let me make sure it's within calibration. Let me set the calibration weight, the 5 gram calibration weight on it. Okay, so it's calibrated at 5 grams. It's just fine. So let me get this set where I need to get it set. Make sure that We got the tip of the stylus right on the little black dot on the scale. Yeah, although the counterweight is set just a hair under 1.5 grams, the scale's reading 3.62 grams, so it's riding much too heavy for this cartridge and stylus. So let me go ahead and balance the tone arm. So first off, let me just make sure that our turntable is level, our platter is level, and it is. I'm just using this torpedo level, as you can see, and yeah, the bubble's right in the center. Let me check it on this plane here, and yep, looks good. So starting with a level turntable, let me go ahead and float the tone arm, get that thing zeroed out, and then set the tracking force and see how accurate the tone arm is as far as, you know, based on the setting of the counterweight and dial and all that stuff. So let me get to that. All right, so I'm not going to get down real low with the tripod and all that, but what I'm essentially doing is I'm adjusting the counterweight at the rear there so the tone arm is level with the top of the plinth. Okay, I want it level. I don't want it, you know, down too far. I don't want it up too far. I just want it nice and level, parallel with the top surface of the plinth here. And that's my 0 point. That's zeroing out the tone arm. So I'm going to very carefully set that dial. The dial itself, let me rotate it over. The dial itself that has the numbers on it moves independently of the actual weight itself. So I'm going to lock the tone arm back in the rest, and I'm going to hold the weight itself steady while I rotate the dial to 0. So I'm zeroing out everything. So let me do that. All right. So now that I have the dial zeroed out and the tone arm floating nice and parallel, nice and level with the plinth, I'm going to go ahead and rotate the entire weight now until I get the reading set at, I'm going to start with, again, you know, 1.5 to 2.5 grams. I'm just going to set it at 2 grams and call that good for this cartridge, okay? So that's not tracking too light, not tracking too heavy, just kind of, you know, right there, a happy little compromise. And let me go ahead and rotate it now. Okay, there's 1 gram. There's 1.5. And let's see. And 2 grams. Now let's see if this tone arm, you know, the weight and all that, the setting is fairly accurate considering that this is not a high-end turntable. Let's see how close we are to 2 grams. So let me go ahead and get the scale back on the platter and weigh the tracking force. Okay, so despite, you know, balancing the tone arm, zeroing the tone arm, and rotating the weight and all that, I have it set at 2 grams right now. It's weighing in at 1.84 grams, but that's okay. I'm not going to cry over spilt milk. I'm going to go ahead and just compensate for that with the weight and tweak it and all that. All right, so I tweaked the weight a little bit and got it at, you know, it's 1.99 grams. I'll take that. The one problem that I noticed with this counterweight is that it has a very loose feel to it, so I don't know if it's going to move much, but I don't know. I suppose one thing that I could do that might help it out a little bit is I could start over. I could just remove the weight and actually use, I have some pretty thick damping grease, that might, if I place some damping grease in the grooves there, I think that'll kind of stiffen it up a little bit, because it does have a very loose feel. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, because when the customer's using it and kind of moving the tone arm around, my concern is that if that weight or the tone arm gets bumped a little bit, it's going to shift that weight. Okay, so I applied some damping grease to that counterweight. I'll get to that in just a minute, but let me see where the tracking force is now. Yeah, so it's showing right about just a hair over 2 grams, like 2.02. I'll take that, that's fine. I'm not going to tweak around with it anymore. That's close enough. So I'm sure it'll track a little bit better there. It was a little bit too heavy for this cartridge and stylus. So anyways, let me pan around over here and zoom in a little bit and back it off so it, come on, focus in. There we go, good enough. So yeah, I ended up putting a little bit of damping grease, the same type of damping grease that I use with potentiometer shafts, like volume control, the volume control shafts. So I just ended up using this, if I can hold it and not drop it, this Nio gel, okay, synthetic damping grease. So good stuff, but you know, not necessarily intended for that. But damping grease is damping grease. You know, anything that needs damping like this, it shouldn't need it, but it is what it is. This was so loose that if you breathed on it, you know, it would move off of its set weight. So it's definitely a little stiffer now, better than it was. So I think it'll hold a little bit, so that way when the tone arm is being moved around or whatever, it's not going, you know, it's not going to drift off of its weight as easy. So yeah, again, better than it was. Okay, now I just want to do a real quick check of the angle, and let me pan down a little bit. I just want to check the angle of this cartridge and stylus, of course, as to how they ride in the record groove. Okay, so we want this cartridge to be, and stylus of course, to be straight on with the record groove. And as I often explain this, I'll say that the V of my fingers is the record groove, and let's say that this is a stylus. We don't want it tilted, you know, this way. We don't want the yaw angle or the zenith to be off, or the roll angle. Okay, we want it sitting straight in the groove. All right, so that's essentially what I'm looking at, and so I'm just going to check it against a couple null points on this protractor here. There's a dot here, there's a dot over here. So when I set the stylus on the dot, I'm looking at these horizontal lines, okay? And what I'm doing is I'm just making sure that those horizontal lines on that protractor and the face of this cartridge are even with each other. Okay, they're level with each other, even with each other, or you know, they're running in parallel. They're just straight on. The cartridge shouldn't be, you know, it shouldn't be going this way, you know, like that. You know, the yaw angle off or the roll angle or whatever the case. Now this tone arm only has so much adjustability, but the cartridge itself, I could loosen up these screws a little bit and tweak the yaw angle, the zenith of the cartridge a little bit to get it to run completely straight with those horizontal lines that I pointed out. So that's the mission here. That's what I'm going to do. All right, as much as I hate hand holding shots, you can probably see how off the face of that cartridge is in comparison to the horizontal lines directly in front of it. Okay, the one closest to it. You see that angle? We don't want that, so I'm going to go ahead and tweak that cartridge just a little bit so that it's straight between these two null points. You see let me see if I can find my finger in the viewfinder here. So that little dot there, and there's another one that the stylus is currently sitting on. So when I compare between the two, I'm going to want this cartridge lined up, you know, nice and straight with those horizontal lines. You can clearly see that it is not. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, y'all, so here I am on the way back bench in the dark, scary reaches of the shop, in the backwoods over here, the deliverance bench where the banjos play and the pigs squeal. So here we go. I've got some test vinyl all situated here. I'm not going to play anything by any famous artists because of the whole copyright thing. So again, I just have a piece of test vinyl with some tones. So I'm going to keep that short because I know these test tones are annoying on the ears. In fact, if you're listening with headphones, I don't have it super loud, but just be aware of that. You might want to adjust your volume right now when you see me getting ready to drop the tone arm. So let me do that. Let me drop the needle on the vinyl and make it final and show everybody that everything is working. And there you go. So let me do it to it.
Band 2, 1000 cycles per second sine wave test tone.
Okay, enough of that. So everything is working. It would be great if I can play music, but hey, you know, it is what it is with all the copyright stuff and all that. Don't want to deal with it. But yeah, this is working just fine, and that's really about it. Not a big deal. So I'm going to end it here, guys, and as I always say, peace, love, music, and the vintage audio that brings it to your ears. Till next time, y'all take care.
This has been a Spinning Head production.